Moving on to part 3.2, your responsibilities as an editor. I just wanted to address this because going into it, I didn't know that I was a video editor. I didn't really understand what these responsibilities were until I had to make them up in my own company. And over the years, I've understood really what an editor should do within a company. And so you have to understand that as an editor, you are the last chain of defense. Okay. So if you're in battle, you're the last people to touch base or like to make like you're the last person to win that battle, right? You've got the torches. You're like, all right, bring in the editors, because everybody else died. No, but I have a little chart for you that'll explain what I mean by that. Number 2 is organizing content. Okay. So a lot of the times, if you're not organized as an editor, you're going to have a hard time. You just got to be naturally organized, in my opinion. If you're not naturally organized, then your life is going to be hell in editing because it requires so much organization and very like systematic, very step-by-step processes. And, obviously there'll be times where I'm less organized than other times and I'll just like slap things together. But I think as a principle, it's something that people are going to rely on you to be organized and organize footage and organize clips and organize everything, really, because when you organize stuff, you're going to get to it faster. You're going to know where it's at versus digging through a Google Drive and like, I think it's in here somewhere. Don't be that. Number 3, your responsibility is to acquire tools to improve efficiency. This could be apps, this could be physical things. It could be technology. It could be presets. They could be downloads, whatever. I'm always looking for the better way. I'm always looking for the faster way to get 1% better, to get 1% quicker, because over time that optimization really adds up and you'll be saving yourself a ton of time when you become efficient in all these little areas of your life. Obviously, if you're an editor for a brand, especially performance agencies, you have to sell the product. It's not just the copywriter and the production team. Like I said, the last chain of defense is post-production. So you're getting all of the leftover stuff, putting it together and selling it because, depending on your skill set and your experience, one editor who's really, really good versus one who's just starting out is going to edit a completely different ad, and one may do terribly and one may do super well, but it's the exact same script and the exact same content. And so I see this all the time with my team. We'll send them the same bucket of raws and you get back something completely different. So it just comes down to your experience, and I would say your experience with like knowing what sells, because you're going to transfer that into your videos, but people are counting on you. So if it doesn't work, the ad doesn't work, it's not saying it's your fault, but it could be your fault. It could be a lot of things, but at least what I like to do with it, with the creative, is know that, okay, I put everything I could into this to try to make this thing sell. It's like trying to, you got a turd, you can't make gold out of a turd all the time, as much as we want to, but you can do your best. Number 5, you got to understand all the nuances to each ad platform. I think the biggest problem I see these days is, editors they're not actually on social, looking at social content and learning from social content, or they're not watching other people's ads, and, they're just consuming content. They're not really analyzing content for what it is. And that is a really that's a big weakness for you. And you have to be on top of your shit if you want to be a better editor, because you want to be called upon. If you're called to duty, so to speak, you want to be able to do any job. Okay. It's like, okay, I need 5 Instagram reels for this, and I need 2 long form YouTube videos, and then I need 3 top of funnel ads in UGC format. Like, okay, do you know what those styles are? Do you know how to edit that with the same assets? So that's what I mean by understanding the nuances. Another responsibility: tell great stories and elicit emotion through your video. I mean, I feel like that's what everybody says, and that will always remain true, because at the end of the day, what matters is the person on the other screen. And if you're making an emotional connection with them by telling a great story, and you can tell stories in ads 100%, you know, you can create your own story and use a UGC, mash it up together to create a flow, to create some sort of, you know, introduction and pain point and benefits and call to action. And so at the end of the day, emotions are really what drive human behavior. And if you're not eliciting any of that, if you're not feeling any of the emotions in your own videos and your own ads and your own creative, then it's probably not going to resonate. So it's just one of those things. Like when I'm reviewing video ads for my own company, and if I'm not feeling it, I'm like, this sucks. Okay, this is not good. You're not captivating me whatsoever. It's most likely not going to be captivating out there too. So focus on that. Give it, you know, let your ad, let your video, share it with somebody and see how they feel. Number 7, keep the user's attention. Get people to click. All right. Just had a presentation on this about how important attention is. It's everything. There's literally a study that says the average attention span these days is 8 seconds. So you have 8 seconds to keep someone's attention or they're bouncing off. And your job as an editor, especially as a direct response video editor, is to get them to click through so that they can go to the landing page so that they can be sold further. And it's not necessarily about putting all the features and all the benefits into one video and, you know, overly stuffing it. It's like, no, get my attention. Okay, sustain my attention. Now get me to click, because that is your objective. So, and if you fail at that, if you fail to get their attention within the first 3 seconds, you've basically wasted your entire video. Okay, all of the work that you've done to create that creative, to write that script, to shoot the video, it's wasted if you don't get their attention, right? That first 3 seconds, that hook, and we'll talk about how important that is later. It's everything. And so always keep that in mind. It's like, I always tell my editors, focus on the hook first. The hook is really the driving force to the person viewing the rest of your content. Number 8, finding creative ways to repurpose content. This is becoming so much more prevalent and required and in demand than ever, is finding editors who can repurpose content for social media. Okay. Not only just for social media, but repurpose content for different ads. Okay. So I'll break down this in another module, but understanding how to modularize your clips and organizing them and creating digital asset management libraries so that you know as an editor where all your ingredients are, so to speak, to create different varieties of pizza, to create different short form, long form, to create different style ads. Like one piece of content, you know, one shoot can last a very long time if you know what you're doing, if you know what to look for. And so we'll cover that later. Number 9, provide suggestions to scripting and production for footage needed. Okay, so because you're on the back end and you're seeing all of the mistakes, you're seeing all the quality or the lack of quality in footage and UGC and content, it is your responsibility to communicate that to the rest of the team or whoever else is with you on the production, because especially if you're working with a brand and you're getting a ton of UGC here and you're getting production teams bringing you content there, like they're not going to know if they're not editing the footage themselves, like, did we do that right? Or, you know, are we missing something? You know, I always like to, when I had a big team, I would always be like, hey, can I get a few more hooks like this? Or I'll ask my actors who I have on my roster, like, hey, can you shoot a couple more B-roll scenes for me? Just because, like, if you're missing something to make the video, sometimes if you go without it, it just doesn't make the video. You know, having that one shot can make such a big difference, especially when it comes down to a hook and you don't have a strong enough hook. That can make or break a video for sure. So always kind of keep that conversation going, no matter where you are in the world. If you're in the Philippines, if you're in Serbia, if you're in US, if you're in Australia, like just communicate, man. Like it's hard enough these days because we're all working remote, but I always like to express, you know, hey, you did a great job here. Hey, it would be nice if you didn't do it like that. I'm just playing, but yeah, keep that open communication. Lastly, learn from the data. Okay, learn from the data and apply learnings. Very, very important, guys. I really just want to stress, if you're not learning from the data, then you're just creating, which is fine. But when you're a performance marketer, direct response marketer, or if you're creating content on social, and if you're not learning from your mistakes, and if you're not looking at the feedback, then you're just creating to create, and you're not going to be growing from there. And it's, the line is what gets measured gets improved. And so just like in videos, if you're measuring the performance of a video and you see what worked, what didn't, it's going to improve itself, because the next iteration of that creative is going to be a better version of that. That's why they have apps version 5.6952.6, right? Because all the users are giving their nasty feedback and be like, I want this changed, and version 1 versus version 100 is way better. And that's the same thing when it comes to ads or anything you're trying to refine in split testing. You have to learn from the data, apply the learning, and revise it and create iterations upon iterations. Yeah, that's a big one. All right. So let's go back to being the last chain of defense. All right. I think of, we just watched the movie Shang-Chi, and there's like that line of army of people. And so it's like, you've got the scripting people in the beginning, you've got production team, and then you've got the editing team. So you are the last chain of defense before you hit delivery, before you actually deploy the ads, right? So you have all the levers to be able to control the messaging, to control the pacing, to control the sequence before it hits the ads. Because when you're in production, you're just shooting and shooting and shooting and getting as much as you can. But once it's done, it's done. It's very hard to go back in production and reshoot something, okay? There's a ton of logistical things you have to do. And editing is one of those things where you're a lot more nimble. You can flow a lot more. It's like, okay, this didn't work, so I can maybe hack together a stock clip or whatever, right? But you have to know that you're the last chain of defense. So it's a very important role before you deploy ads. Number 2, organizing content. I think this is extremely important. Many, many times, if you're a freelancer or you work at an agency, or even if you work for a brand, or if you shoot your own stuff and you just dump everything into a Google Drive or a Dropbox and it just looks like a complete mess, you're going to have a hard time maximizing the footage and content that you have to create tons of variations, and you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a nightmare for you until you learn to organize your own footage, your own content, your own brand stuff into buckets. I like to call them buckets, because when you have different buckets, you know where all your stuff is, you label them, just like with our kids, we have buckets for toys. It's like, this one is all your Transformers, these are your dinosaurs, and these are your Legos, right? Same thing here. And so when you go into that, it's a little bit of time, it takes time, but when you do it, you'll be a lot more thankful and grateful, because moving forward, any new content that you get, you just put them into the buckets, right? So there's different levels of degrees of precision that you can do when it comes to organization, right? You can do obviously the main folders, and then the subfolders, and then the naming convention of the clip itself. So there's a lot of detail that you can do. And I think the more detailed that you can be, the better, if you have the time. I don't necessarily have the time all the time, so I rely on other people to do it. But for me, I like being anal about it, and it makes my life so much easier. Number 3, acquire tools to increase efficiency. Okay, let's get into this real quick. So when you're an editor, you're looking for plugins, you're looking for visual effects, you're looking for sound effects, you're looking for typography, stock resources, automation, AI. All these things are coming out to make your life easier, including AdsRx, right? We have tons of motion graphics, tons of overlays, tons of things that will speed up your workflow and make you a better editor. But there's so much out there, and I suggest looking at the ones that you're going to use most often. Like, for example, we use a transition pack that is very, very valuable. It saves so much time, and it's better than using the typical default transitions. And typography is a big one too, getting nice font packs. I typically will use the same font styles over and over again, but you've got to have your font choices, and you got to have that dialed in. One thing that I'm excited about is actually automation and AI, and I can go over that in another video, but using Chat GPT, I can't remember if I'm saying this right, Chat GTP, to basically come up with hooks for me, come up with scripts. There's so much out there. They even have different apps now where it creates captions for you. So it's only a matter of time before AI catches up to us editors, and it's able to do a lot of the manual labor that was once, a requirement for us. So I'm excited about that. Obviously, I love saving time, and if I can save more time, I'm in it. That's always been my thing. Number 4, selling the damn product. All right, I think we talked about this, but you've seen this video, this section in Wolf of Wall Street, Sell Me This Pen, right? It's our job to sell, whether you're a salesperson or not. You're a visual seller. You're a visual storyteller. Your job is to make things engaging. Even if you're not selling something physical, you're selling someone on your values. You're selling someone on the attention. You're selling someone on the education that you're providing. Whatever the case may be, like every situation in essence is selling. If you're trying to persuade someone, if you're trying to get someone to take action on something, if you're trying to get your girlfriend or your wife, your brother or sister to go watch a movie with them, you got to convince them, right? So that's selling. But we're doing it in the form of Premiere Pro and videos. All right. So if you're not sold on the video, the audience won't be either, guys. I really just want to say that. I know we've put out work that we're not super proud of, but if you're not sold, they won't be either. And I've seen this happen many times in my agency where I'm like, I just don't think this is going to sell anybody. And, there's a lot of, if you can look at it objectively, a lot of the times people can be biased about their work. The brands can be biased about their product. There's a lot of biases going around, and creative is a very subjective thing, but it's also a very emotional feeling thing that I think only really a creative or someone who's very in tune with their intuition or their emotions can understand. It's like, I always kind of trust my gut. And usually right when it comes to this, it's like, I'm not feeling it, and it'll probably resonate true when you do launch it. But when you're fired up about something, definitely a higher likelihood, but still it can misfire. You can put something out there that you think is going to sell and it doesn't. And we'll get into that, but that's just where testing comes in. I think we talked about this, understanding the nuances between all the social platforms. All right. As you know, you have Facebook, you've got YouTube, you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, and even Snap, but I think they're going under. It's not we're not really talking about Snap in this course because there's just not much hype about it anymore. But TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of it is getting big. And if you're not already watching, videos, ads on these platforms, it's time to do it for research, baby. I got off social for a long time because I kept seeing a lot of people on there, and I was just comparing myself and then getting really depressed and I'm getting angered and all this stuff, very envious. I'm not sure if you've ever felt that way, but I decided, fuck it. I'm just gonna go on there and I'm just gonna block everybody who I don't want to watch. But nowadays I've really seen, the same content just be posted on every platform, and it's becoming just this one universal platform from my experience. Like everything looks the same actually, but it really depends on what platform you're on, who's mostly on that platform. And yeah, so I say YouTube is probably the most different in terms of the creative style compared to the rest of these, because it's a different intention going into YouTube. You're there for long form content. You're there for education. You're there for entertainment. And the videos look completely different, as you know. So as an editor, I think it's really important that, you understand the nuances and the reasons why, short form content or whatever content works on that platform. Don't just consume the content, analyze it. All right. I think I used to be a consumer, and I think a lot of people are they're consumers of content versus becoming analyzers of it. And when you can analyze something, then you've separated yourself from a consumer, which means, hey, like you're taking a step back from what's actually happening in front of you. You're not necessarily listening to the message. You're not letting it get to you. You're just observing it. You're just observing what's happening, not emotionally. And when you're able to do that, then you're able to notice the patterns that are happening. A lot of these like very viral videos on social media, when I analyze it, if I don't get sucked into it, you can see they're using all types of techniques to draw your attention in. They've got flashy text, they've got headline captions, they've got a timer bar coming out. They've got lots of punching in. They're changing the caption styles every 5 seconds. You know what I mean? There's so much going on. But if you're just consuming the content, you're just listening to his voice, like, oh, this is so funny. You don't realize you're actually being hypnotized by it. So subconsciously, it's a hard one to break if you haven't quite done it yet. So you can't edit something if you don't know what you're looking at. It's like trying to fix a car engine without understanding how the parts work. And I think a lot of editors will just call themselves editors because they know how to use a program and cut together some clips. But it's way, way deeper than that. Editing, I feel like, think of editors in movies, like how much time, precision, research, planning goes into making that. And, it's mostly editors are typically on set when shooting. If your editor isn't on set, like they're going to have a lot harder time understanding like the vision. So being on set is super, super valuable. But like I said, if you don't know what you're editing, like if you don't watch YouTube and you're editing a YouTube video, like, come on, what are we doing here? Like, this isn't the right job for you. Or go and do a ton of research for yourself and figure out how to do it. Quick story. When I first started off in direct response over like 10 years ago, I got this job at an agency and I didn't know graphic design, but my partner said to the owner, hey, I've got this amazing web designer who you should hire, bring him in tomorrow, and let's see if, he's got what it takes. Long story short, I went in there and I absolutely just killed the design. Like, it was so bad. It was the worst design he has ever seen. He pulls my buddy aside. He's like, dude, I can't have this guy in. So what I did, I was so defeated. I was so bummed out. I went on YouTube and I just looked up every single landing page design tutorial out there. And I redesigned it and I sent it to him at like 6 a.m. But I was like, hey dude, what do you think of this? He sees it, he opens it and he's like, it's awesome, man. Yeah, you should come back. And right there, that was the beginning of my direct response career, because that moment on, he taught me everything that I knew about direct response in design, and I carry that forward for the rest of my life. So just a little bit of research or a lot of research can go a long way. So, you taking this course is that step forward for sure. Number 6, tell great stories and elicit emotion. All right, we went through this, but, put a smile on someone's face, right? There's a lot of emotions out there that people like feeling. They like feeling happy. They like feeling excited. But there's also a lot of negative emotions out there too that I would say marketers prey on, that we'll talk about in a second. But storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. It's the only way to put ideas into the world that people will remember and that will inspire change. I feel like being a great storyteller, it took me a long time to develop the skills of being a good storyteller. It's a lot of practicing, and you can be a storyteller in different formats and different mediums. You could use your voice as storytelling. You could use art. You can use a script. You can use video. You can use, sounds. Like movies. There's so many ways of storytelling, but ultimately it's creating a very emotional connection. And we'll go into more of the technical aspects of storytelling when it comes to ads. Number 7, keeping attention. All right. So most people are just mindlessly scrolling through their phones, looking at content, blah, 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 blah. And your ad is competing with all of the other videos on their feed. Okay. And so if you're not breaking the pattern, if you're not adding a pattern interrupt into their feed, if you're not catching their attention within that first 3 seconds, you've already lost them, right? They swiped right past you, and you're like this guy who hates his job, hates his life, and just looks at social media all day. So I mentioned this earlier, but the average attention span of an adult is actually 8 seconds. All right. And I think that's roughly around the attention of a goldfish, which is, I think, 9 seconds. But with this being said, if you lose their attention, all of your work is for nothing. That part just hurts me so much. All of the work that you put into creating, writing, editing, producing a piece of content, if it doesn't hook them in, if you don't keep their attention long enough, it's gone, dude. You've lost your chance, and the algorithm will not favor you. You will not get good results with your ads. Your costs will be super high. All these bad things. So it really comes down to your ability to sustain attention, and I really believe editing has the power to do that. With great editing, you can sustain attention without a doubt. Number 8, find creative ways to repurpose your content. All right. So this is an example of taking one asset into dozens. All right. This is an example of one UGC that we shot that I was able to create various dozens of different variations out of. But also, taking this one asset and splicing it into other mashups, so to speak, and leveraging it that way. So there's so many potential ways to use one piece of content. Don't ever waste one piece of content. I feel like a lot of brands will just get a bunch of stuff shot, but they don't know what to do with it. So I think as a really smart editor is being able to identify, okay, this is a very powerful clip. This is a very valuable video. Understanding the value and worth of a video versus just seeing something as a video is I would say a very nuanced thing that you will learn over time. Number 9, provide suggestions to scripting production for footage needed. So we went over this a little bit, but look, if you've got these buckets of assets and content, you've got a lot of UGC, you've got your animations down, you've got product shots, and you've got photography laid down, but you don't have enough lifestyle video shots and you're missing hooks. All right. So you're trying to make a certain video. You don't have these assets. It's your job to explain and request these from your production team to make sure you get them, right? It's going to make your life easier. You guys are working together. And if you're shooting your own content and, you should know after editing, it's like, okay, I probably need more of this. I'm missing that. So I like to think of these as your ingredients. And if you're missing any ingredients, you got to make sure you restock and you have a consistent flow of new ingredients coming in to keep your stuff fresh, right? So I think that's what everyone is after these days, is having a consistent flow of content. And as editors, because we can only pull that lever so much, we don't have control over it. Our job is to maximize the content that we're given and get creative with it. All right. So number 10, I think this is the last one, learn from the data and apply the learnings. All right. So this is a very simple explanation of the process, right? So from the beginning, you have editing, testing the ad, and then assessing which ones were the losers and the winners. And then based off of the winners, we want to iterate on those, and then we want to scale. So this is that feedback loop process that will just keep going until you refine. You hit winning angles, you hit winning ads, you scale them, you refresh them, and you continue that process. That is how the game is played, my friends.